Hello and welcome to episode number 254 of the Reasons I'm Broke podcast, bringing you the reasons we're broke every single week, ranging from comics, movies, TV, video games, and more. I'm Daniel.
And I'm Kelly.
This week we do have a very special episode. We always like to, whenever possible, have some kind of guest every now and again to just sort of break the regular rhythm of the podcast and the show. And the week's release for this episode, which is 254, Kelly and I weren't actually able to record a regular podcast for all of you. And thankfully, we did have a very special guest this week that was able to fill in and record an extra show for you all so that there is something for that week's release. And we always want to reiterate that the Skype interviews, the podcast, the guest interviews that we do would not be possible without our Patreon backers.
And we do have a great Patreon shout out this week. This week it goes out to Chris, who is at the Irish on Fire.
Chris has recently been tweeting and is a big proponent of the net neutrality FCC debacle. So he's been out there retweeting and getting the word out there as far as, you know, going on the website for the FCC and writing to them and letting them know about net neutrality. So not only is he a big supporter of podcasts and YouTube shows, he's also a big supporter of the internet.
we're all a supporter of the internet at this point.
So it's pretty amazing. Thank you so much, Christopher, again, at the Irish on Fire, and to the rest of our Patreon brokettes. If you would also like your monthly shout out, head on over to patreon.com/thereasonsimebroke. For as little as $1 a month, which is 25 cents an episode, you too can get your shout out.
But of course, our podcast will always be free. The best thing you can do for us is leave us a review on iTunes, reach out to us on Twitter, let your friends know about us, get the word out there about our show.
So with that in mind, today's show is going to be very loose, very casual, and a lot of fun. This guest that we have on today, Brokettes, definitely longtime Brokettes know him, and he is himself a longtime Brokette, the originator of the term Brokette right here on the podcast about 150 episodes ago. It was a while ago, many years back. And you have heard his name every month. And I have known him for many years. I used to work with him at GameStop, and hopefully we can talk about that a little bit. A lot of great stories on that end. But I do want to introduce a very good friend, huge supporter of the show, and a huge supporter of not only Kelly and I, but also the rest of the Brokettes out there and other friends of ours. So we want to welcome to the show Mr. Alex, Mr. PurpleSwordfish himself.
Hey, thanks for having me on. It has been a long time since I've been on the show. I'm glad you went back and found out how long it's been, because I was trying to, but you guys are episode 254 now, so going back all that way is almost impossible.
We actually just had a listener on Twitter tell us that he is going back to episode number 1 and just binging everything.
No. Don't go back to episode 1.
Is that like a car crash? I mean, you're a YouTuber, Al. To anyone somehow not familiar with Alex and PurpleSwordfish, you do YouTube videos. Imagine someone saying, I'm going back to your very first video and I'm going to watch every single one up until what you have now. There's a sense of panic, isn't there?
It definitely does set a sense of panic in for you, and I have had a couple people tell me that, and my first video is still up there. I posted it, I think, the day after my birthday about 3 years ago, and I went back and watched it, and I was like, oh my God, everything's terrible. The audio's all out of whack. The gameplay looks okay, but there's like no webcam. I mean, I didn't know what I was doing back then. And I know you guys probably feel the same way, where like if I go back and I listen to your first episode, I'm sure it's not that bad from my perspective because I'm not looking for the little inconsistencies. But you guys are so good on your quality, and like the quality control has really gotten better over the years for you guys. You invested a lot of money in it, a lot of time, all the editing, all the long nights, right? So when you go back to that original episode, which was you just like feeling it out for the first time, you're like, oh God, I sound terrible. So I totally get it.
It's a good sign, though, for both of us, because that means that the show that's the evidence right there that it's gotten better, because you never really know yourself until you actually go back and see the progress right in front of you. And as we mentioned before, Alex is available at PurpleSwordfish.com. It will take you straight into his YouTube channel where he does Let's Plays, and very big on Madden specifically. You've got a huge Madden following right there on the channel, but you also review a bunch of indie games and do Let's Plays for indie games.
Yeah, it's a little bunch of everything, man. There's indie stuff on there. I do reviews, Madden, just really anything that I'm excited about. That's what I try to explain to people. Like, it's not a Madden channel. It's not an indie game channel. It's basically any game that I'm excited about. And I kind of want to just share the experience. So there are some like straight playthroughs. Like I've done ukulele recently where I'm doing like a full series on it. But then there's stuff like one-off videos with an indie game that I just think is really cool. And then recently I've been trying to branch out into PC games. So I just put up a review for a really nice PC game that I got a review code for. And I cannot thank the indie developers enough because they're so cool in sending over titles for channels like myself to play and cover for you guys. So it's a pretty cool channel. I don't want to make this a giant plug for my channel, but if you could check it out, that'd be really awesome.
It's going to be a giant plug for your channel.
Well, I didn't want to come on here like I'm selling a book or something,
Will you be signing people's monitors or cell phones, Alex? Local Barnes and Noble?
I can, and if you're like a true fan, if you've been there since the first really bad Watch Dogs video that I put up, I'll even put like #TrueFan for you. Because I know that's a running joke on this show. Like, you're only a true fan if you've been there since number one. So if you came on anywhere before that, you are not a true fan. You have no stake in what they do with that character from a creative standpoint.
So let's go way back and introduce listeners to how you and I first met. And that is actually with our very old GameStop days in a mall, because that's where GameStops were. And more specifically, that's where EB Games were. And that's what this shop used to be before that conversion to GameStop.
Yeah, it was a long time ago, man. I think it might have been, did we start working together in 2009? I think it was 2009, maybe 2008.
So, but it was right around that time because I moved down here in 2007, and then I worked on their map for a couple of years, and then that's when that's probably about 2008 or 2009.
Yeah, it is a while back. I'd have to go back and try to figure it out, but it's been almost a decade that we've known each other. But yeah, I took over this store in a mall here in the Central Florida area that was not doing very well. And we had a really good time working there. And we actually did very successful. We were very successful at that store, in my opinion. IMHO. But, we made it profitable. We had a lot of fun working there. And then we quickly became friends outside of work.
Yes.
And I knew me and Daniel were going to become very good friends when one time, a bunch of us from the store went and hung out, and we went to go see UFC, and we were watching the UFC fights, and then afterwards somebody says, yeah, there's this house party going down at this guy named Seth's apartment. And I'm like, I don't even know Seth, but Daniel was like, we gotta go, man. So let's go grab a case of beer and let's go. We're just gonna crash it because we know a bunch of people that are going, and we'll just be like, yeah, we're so-and-so's friend. So we go to this funny story. Believe it or not, this was in the same apartment complex that I was living at the same time. So I'm like, oh, I live right around the corner from this guy. I'm in the same apartment complex as this guy named Seth. And we just show up with a case of beer, and we go in there, and I remember me and Daniel somehow got in contact with the guy holding this party. And we were killing Patron shots. I just remember we were doing tequila shot after tequila shot after tequila shot.
I'm happy I'm hearing this now.
So, well, it's a good story for your kid.
Okay, there we go.
So me and Daniel were already partying and all that, but we went really late into the night, and I don't know why we decided to do this because we actually had to open the store the next morning, but I remember we got completely trashed. I woke up the next morning. It was a Sunday morning, really hungover, went to the store, and I'm totally not expecting Daniel to show up. I'm like, there's no way he's showing up after a party like that. I'm only doing it because if I don't show up, I'm going to get fired. And Daniel walks in, hungover and everything. We killed it that day. We sold so much stuff. I don't know how, but we did. And at that moment, I'm like, you know what? I'm pretty sure even when I'm done working at GameStop, me and Daniel are probably still going to be friends. And here we are today.
I do now remember that. Yeah, we not only did we sell a shit ton of product, but we got reserves. We sold a bunch of those. Were they called edge cards at that point?
Yeah, the Game Informer
Game Informer.
subscription with the card. Yeah, oh God, all those metrics, all those terrible memories.
That is a great story, actually. That is perfect. That encompasses everything that you and I love about life.
That was a terrible story. Terrible.
Alcohol, partying, and then kicking ass at work.
We made so many new friends that night and then immediately forgot those friends. So
And since then, throughout the years, of course, we worked together at GameStop, and even after that, we hung out outside of work, and whenever we can now. We're both, of course, incredibly busy, but every now and again, we'll head on over to Sea Dog over by downtown Disney, have some drinks, go to Player One, go to the Irish bar next door, and then, head on home, and that's really how we catch up, right?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've probably not been as good as I would like to be in staying in touch with people, especially with my work schedule and things like that. But I mean, when you've hung out with somebody for a decade, you're pretty much friends for life at that point. Like you just like, you're going to have to deal with me, Daniel. I mean, like, we're just going to be friends. It's just like that now.
So Leo's going to have yet another uncle. We're going to have Uncle Alex.
Yeah, man. I can't wait to meet him. Can't wait.
He's going to be the cutest.
So aside from that, Al, let's go ahead and go into, once again, I said this was going to be a big plug for your YouTube channel. And then from there, we'll go on to, movies, what we've been playing lately, what we've been watching. I do want to cover this because I did it with the Lazy Gaming guys, and I like to get different perspectives. And I know a lot of brokeheads do want to start their own podcast. They want to do their own YouTube channel. So it's really important for them, or just to enjoy and see the history. I know a lot of your fans are going to be listening to this episode. So I want them to get a refresher on how you got started and what made you want to begin on PurpleSwordfish.
Yeah, so it's a really good question, and I'm glad you asked it. So basically, I stopped working for GameStop, and I felt like there was kind of this void, if you will, in like me personally, because part of the reason why I liked working for that company, believe me, it wasn't the pay.
That's true.
So it wasn't the pay. It wasn't that I loved being stressed out about trying to cram $5 reserves and discount cards and all that nonsense, whatever metric they made up that month. It wasn't for that. It was mostly because it was a job that I made enough money to where I could live and, also talk about video games with people that, generally speaking, shared an interest in that. So, the customer interaction was kind of what I liked about it, because I made a lot of friends from it, obviously. So anyway, when I left GameStop, I'm like, I don't talk about games anymore, and I miss that. So I was a big gamer still. I would play games, but I really didn't talk about them unless I was with friends. So I thought, hey, there's a bunch of people doing YouTube channels about gaming. Like, let me do one, and I'll keep the format really loose, and I'll just do stuff that I'm interested in. And then from there, it just kind of took off. Like, I started putting up videos that were just basic Let's Play videos. Started trying to do like really loose reviews on games. I know I started doing a couple Madden videos probably about a month in. I noticed those did really well, and I just kind of doubled down on it. And from there, I started doing a lot of Madden videos and developed a following of, I like to call them friends of the channel, because that's really what they are. People that like checking out Madden videos and like the content, and people that would come back and watch every single Madden video that I put out. And then from there, I decided, hey, I don't want to just kind of pigeonhole myself into one thing, because, the problem with that is you really will burn yourself out on it. Mm-hmm. And I actually did that this year. I kind of burnt myself on Madden, and it was really unfortunate, because it really just, it really messed up my metrics and my numbers, but we could get into that in a separate conversation. But long story short, I decided that there were a lot of indie games that I like playing on Xbox One that I would have loved to cover. And from there, I took this massive leap of faith and kind of went outside of my comfort zone. And that's what I will tell people. Okay. Like, when you start a channel, like, if you're out there right now and you're thinking about starting a YouTube channel, a podcast, or anything creative, like, you're going to have to go outside of your comfort zone. Like, yep. 99% of people are going to have to do so. So it was really scary. Like, I remember starting my first video, and I turned the mic on and I turned on the recording, and I'm like, what do I say? Like, you just have that weird moment, and then eventually you realize you just have to be yourself. Mm-hmm. And just put yourself out there, and whatever feedback you get, good, bad, in between, you deal with it and you just try to make my goal was make every video just a little bit better, right? So, but like I said, I didn't want to get myself into just Madden. So there were a lot of indie games I wanted to cover, and I decided I would start sending off emails to game developers and say, hey, I have a smaller following, but I'm really passionate about my videos. I'm passionate about the product. Would you mind sending me a review code, for a game that's coming out? And shockingly enough, I mean, I would get a lot of no's. I would get a lot of non-responses. But at the same time, every once in a while, somebody would say yes, and I would cover those games on my channel, and I would try to make it the most kick-ass coverage possible, like, so that I could go to other developers after that and say, hey, look at this coverage that I did for this game over here. And, from there, just kind of snowballed, and it's hard to believe, but from a guy who did a Wolfenstein video that is pretty bad as his first shot on YouTube, and then before that, a Watch Dogs test video where I didn't know what to say. Like, now I get on videos and I'm like, geez, how can I get this down to 15 minutes? Like you really struggle to get your time down. So that's just kind of how it's evolved and morphed over the years. And then, as time goes on, you have to keep improving. So like I started adding things like a webcam. I started, learning about audio editing. I started learning more about video editing, all that. And now I have these skills that I could actually take and use in the workplace even. So it's just been a really cool journey. And, what I would tell people is if you're thinking about starting it, give it a shot, man. It's totally worth it. You'll like it. It's a nice hobby.
Yeah, I feel like there's always got to be, I don't know if everyone else is the same way, but I always have to have some kind of creative outlet. That's just the way I've always been. Since I was a kid, I used to draw. I used to always do something creative. I've never been much of a math person or kind of like a problem solver. I've always been more of a creative guy. So that's when I see, the podcast to me is like, okay, I don't have that itch anymore of I need to draw something. I need to create something. And instead it's the show. And then with that come the graphic design aspects, the editing, and you are essentially creating something for other people to enjoy. And sometimes it's an audio thing. Sometimes it's a let's play like you do on YouTube. Sometimes painters, put up a painting for exhibit. And I feel like anyone that is creative at all has that sense of I need to accomplish this and I need to put it out for not even just for people to enjoy, but for myself. And I think part of you saying that you need to get better at it and you have to constantly work at it is how you stay sharp and how you maintain the quality to what you feel it should be. Absolutely.
I mean, take your show, for example, which huge fan of, by the way. I listen every single week.
Thank you.
And if you don't believe me, you can go on Patreon and you can see that I've been a contributor for, I think, pretty much as long as you've had a Patreon.
Since the very beginning. Yeah.
Or pretty close to it. I mean, I really do love the show. And it's crazy. Like when I look at yours, obviously I'm looking outside looking in. So it seems a little bit more, it's probably a little bit more evident to me because like I look at your format's totally changed since you started. Mm-hmm. And the audio quality's way up and, I can tell you guys edit more and you have bumps in the middle of the show and you have an intro now every week and you didn't have that before. And it's like just those little tweaks. You guys have gone from, just a very basic podcast to like this really professional quality sounding venture. And it's really cool to see content creators grow like that. So a lot of times when I'm on YouTube, channels like your own podcast where you guys have grown so much over the years, like those are the most fun for me to watch because it's not some guy who already had a big name, started a YouTube channel and instantly had a following. It's somebody who built it from the ground up. And it's probably like a 1 or 2 man operation like you guys.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, go ahead, Kelli.
We're going to have you on here every week.
And I do want to have one exception to one big name creator that started a podcast that already had a huge following. And the one exception is Adam Carolla, because he seems to like so many of my Instagram posts that I'm just like, you know what? You're all right, Adam Carolla.
You get a pass.
I love Adam Carolla. He has a show on Spike TV, and it's called Catch a Contractor. And all it is Adam Carolla and this guy. So Adam Carolla, I did not know this. Licensed contractor, knows a lot about construction. Never would have guessed that.
I didn't know that either.
I know, based on his work, I thought he was just a straight up comedian. Apparently, when he was a fledgling comedian just trying to get a break, he got into contracting because there's a lot of contractor work in California, apparently. So anyway, it's this show with him, and it's very low budget, but it's very good, and you should check it out sometime. It's him and his buddy, who's like another licensed contractor, and they go and they help these people out who hired a contractor. The contractor either like split or did like really bad work or whatever. They track the contractor down and they like rub the guy's nose in it. Like they're like, oh, look at how bad this work is. And like the whole time, Adam Carolla is taking cheap shots at the guy, and because he's a piece of shit, you're like, well, I love this. Like, keep taking cheap shots at him. Like, this is great.
Is this on YouTube? You said it's on Spike. I'm sorry.
It's on Spike TV, but I'm thinking you can probably, like, because it's been out for a while, you can probably find some of the older episodes like on demand or maybe even like on Hulu or Netflix. But like, I'm a DVR guy. So like, I had this show DVR every week, and my fiance Ashley and I, we love it. We think it's great, and I love Adam Carolla's work in general. But this show, it was just so unexpected, out of left field, and it's just really good.
So it's like the To Catch a Predator version of construction and contractors.
Yeah, but it's more intentionally funny, whereas To Catch a Predator is unintentionally funny, and like it's funny in a really dark way because like, okay, Chris Handsome, he is a very handsome man,
yes.
but he's got a dirty job to do, and he makes it really lighthearted, even though like this is really dark stuff. You said you were gonna blank her blank in the blank, like what?
And each one of those predators is essentially a character. They're like cast members. They're so goofy sometimes that I'm like, this is. Can you return? Like, I know we got to put him away, but can we set him up? Like, I don't know if we can get him on some kind of contract while he's in jail when he comes back. Like, they have personalities.
Yeah, like, you know, some of them you're like, oh God, they're just so pathetic. But other ones, like the stories they come up with, like, you should be a writer. Like, you're really good.
My favorite is still Sir Please.
He just kept telling him, Sir please, Sir please.
Or the guy who took a nap.
Oh yeah.
He's like, I'm gonna go to sleep.
He feigned like feeling terrible, so he just laid down on the floor and took a nap.
It's a wonderful show.
Amazing characters. I do have this is completely out of left field, not related to this at all, but I was thinking about this all day today, and I knew you were the perfect person to ask. And it's still kind of dark. What is the best divorce movie? Now, I've got two options here for you, Al, because we have talked about movies extensively in the past. Kramer versus Kramer or Mrs. Doubtfire?
Oh.
See, now you know I'm biased here, Daniel. And funny story, I think everybody on this podcast will agree that it is Mrs. Doubtfire because I remember one night we all hung out and we watched Mrs. Doubtfire together. And even just the loading screen for the Blu-ray made us all crack up. For some unexplainable reason, just the loading screen, the menu for the Blu-ray of Mrs. Doubtfire. And if you haven't already, go out and buy that. It's like $5.99 at Best Buy in the bargain bin anytime you go there. But yeah, just the loading screen at the menu. It's wonderful. It's a great movie. And then here's why I'm going to say it's such a great divorce movie. There's no happy ending, really.
That's
right?
true. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The ending is realistic. Robin Williams does not get back with his bitch of a wife. And and he almost goes to prison. Like
and almost kills a guy.
Yeah.
But it's funny, funny.
It's Robin Williams.
He was drinking scotch. Let him off the hook.
Oh my God, that's so true.
In a weird way, it is kind of a dark comedy. Like, there's some moments in there, like the bus driver who like is kind of like really wants to get with them, and
he's the best. That bus driver. I hope he ended up with someone in that story. Whatever they almost did a Mrs. Doubtfire too. If they ever had done that, I wanted to see an ending to that bus driver. Maybe he finds kind of a manly woman, and that's who he ends up with.
I mean, that's what he's into. So, I appreciate that it was the mid-'90s, a very judgmental time in American history, and he was willing to be himself and put himself out there. And
see, I never...
And
The way I
Fall
read
for a
that
woman in
scene,
drag.
the way I read that scene is he liked the way Robin Williams looked so much because he first he sees him come in and he said, "Wow, you're a big lady," and then he starts immediately hitting on him, and it's not until after his his nylon fell that he sees the hairy leg and he's kind of shocked at first, but he seems to have fallen so hard for Robin Williams that it's almost like he's making an excuse for it. He's like, "Oh, that's natural. Just the way God made you." And I'm like, I think you just really want to get with Robin Williams in spite of how hairy he or she may be. So he's willing to change.
Yeah. I mean, the exact quote is, "I like that Mediterranean."
Oh, that's true. That's
women.
true.
And then he says natural, healthy. And it's like, whoa. He's willing to do anything.
Yeah, he could have been bullshitting just to get some, get his dick wet a little bit.
Yeah.
Poor guy. Never saw Mrs. Doubtfire again, except on television.
Yes.
No.
Yeah, she did show up on. If he watches those shows, you guys really like this guy.
We were like that guy. We like everything about this movie. Like every character, even as he said, his bitch of a wife falls in love with Pierce Brosnan, and I'm like, there's some validity right there. Like, all right, you got Pierce Brosnan pre James Bond days. Like, you've got this, Meridian. Or Miranda. I'm sorry, Miranda. That was her name. I don't know if anyone caught that, but you said Mrs. Doubtfire on Blu-ray. That movie does not need to be on Blu-ray, yet I purchased it on Blu-ray. Other people, especially when Blu-rays first came out, and that also goes back to our GameStop days because we did carry those movies. When Blu-ray first came out, people bought them for Casino Royale. They bought them for like the super action movies that you really wanted to see all of the detail and the explosions for. Not for Mrs. Doubtfire. That's the movie you don't want to see the crappy makeup that they didn't anticipate you'd be able to see in high definition. Then now you can see like, he's clearly wearing a mask under there. How did they not see this? She is 1 foot away from Robin Williams' face.
Yeah. I mean, and then there's the moment where like his youngest daughter finds out that it's not a woman and she just looks scarred for life. I mean, there's just a lot of dark moments in this really funny movie. And one of my favorite YouTube videos ever is there was this guy who like he edited Mrs. Doubtfire into a horror movie trailer.
I think I've seen that, yep.
And it's oddly good. Like it was one of those where I was mad. I finished watching it and I'm like, I want that movie.
Have you ever seen the one on The Shining where it's like this goofy comedy?
Yeah. Yeah, that one's really good too.
It's like a feel-good comedy where all this dark stuff that Jack Torrance is doing in the film is put under this happy-go-lucky music of like doon 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 doon, and it's all about him trying to build his relationship with Danny, and that's what it turns into because that's how trailers evolve. Like they'll give you one message and then this little boy came into his life. Whoosh, and then it says The Shining, and it's all beautiful. Like holy crap, man, this movie took a different turn.
Then they all die.
yeah, almost everyone. Have you seen the trailer to Dark Tower, Al?
No.
It is. You saw it the other day, yesterday, actually, when we were watching Spider-Man: Homecoming. It takes place in the Stephen King universe, and I know Stephen King fans would definitely correct me on it, but it seems like the gunslinger, who is one of the main characters in the film, seems to use The Shining as one of his powers to fire off. You see a scene of the Pennywise town. I don't know what the town was called in it, but you see a shot of that broken down. So it seems like this Dark Tower movie is going to be connecting all of these different franchises and books from Stephen King and putting it all into one movie. Did you ever watch any of Stephen King's adapted movies, Al?
I did, and you know what? I take back what I said. I did see the trailer for this movie because I just looked it up, and it's the one with Idris Elba,
yes,
and Matthew McConaughey. Idris Elba, who, by the way, I wish was somehow like 10 years younger, so he could be like the new Green Lantern.
John Stewart, yes.
Yeah, I think he would have been a great Green Lantern. I just realized that the ages just don't match up. But like, oh my God, he would be so great as one. But anyway, one day we'll get a time machine. Anyway, yeah, it looked really cool. It looked really different. And I have watched quite a few Stephen King movies that got turned into movies. My favorite of which is, I think they made it directly for TV, and it was called Thinner.
I don't know if you know. Haven't heard of that one.
Yeah, it's a really cool movie, but you know what? I bet you it hasn't aged well. But it's basically let's see. I'm going to sum it up in the simplest way possible. There's a man who's a really powerful lawyer in his local area. He's drunk. He's driving with his wife home, and they hit this. I think she's like a Native American lady, or maybe a gypsy, one of the two, who really doesn't have anything. Like she's very poor, she's very destitute, but it's her and her husband, and he hits her with the car and kills her, and it's an accident. But you know he gets off because he's a high-powered lawyer. So the husband puts him under this curse where no matter how much he eats, because he's a very, very big, rotund, obese man, no matter how much he eats, he gets thinner and thinner and thinner and thinner, and eventually dies from malnutrition. So it's like this really dark, made for TV movie. And I remember as a kid, it horrified me. And then as like a young adult, I watched it again. I'm like, that guy deserves it, abusing his power.
Let's go back real quick to Jon Stewart, Green Lantern. Are you on the same boat as us? Hashtag no Tyrese. Tyrese has been pushing really hard to be Jon Stewart in the DC extended universe for the upcoming possibly Justice League movies and then the solo Green Lantern film.
I appreciate his fervor, but I don't think that he's a good fit. And, you know, I like Tyrese a lot, even in some of his campy movies, like, for example, Too Fast, Too Furious. I know it's a bad movie. I know I shouldn't like it, but I like it. It's a guilty pleasure. That whole series is a guilty pleasure of mine, but I just don't see him in that role. He's not serious enough. And I want a serious Green Lantern. And I think that's where, not to go too far off track, but I think that's where Ryan Reynolds as Green Lantern didn't work for me either. Mm-hmm. Like, I love Ryan Reynolds, and he's a great Deadpool, and he's a really funny guy, and I like a lot of his other movies, but he's just not the Green Lantern to me. Like, I want my Green Lantern to be a little bit more serious.
Not only was he not Green Lantern, he wasn't Hal Jordan, and there are several issues with that movie in general. I think the part that they did nail was Sinestro was excellent. I think his name was Mark Strong was the actor that played him. And some of the special effects, like it's over CGI'd, unfortunately, especially with the suit. That was the biggest thing, is the suit looked awful when it was just all skin tight CGI. And when you read the comics, it doesn't look like that. And I understand that they have to change some things for the movies, but that was just one of the issues with the solo Green Lantern movie. But it sounds like with the new one, they're going to do a double team up, kind of like what do they end up calling it? A buddy cop Green Lantern intergalactic movie in which you have Hal Jordan and you have Jon Stewart going throughout the galaxy. And I'm sure you'll see the rest of the Lantern Corps. I'm sure you're going to have the Yellow Lanterns already established, Sinestro already the head of Sinestro Corps. It's going to be a movie for people that movies now, the superhero movies are treating their audience as if they don't need to be spoon-fed anymore, who these characters are and what the origins are.
Which is probably for the best, because if you look at like a lot of the superhero movies that haven't done well, it's because they made it too much of an origin story and people were like, I know who this is, just like get to the action, or like just give me something new, like a new storyline. So I mean, even like recently, Suicide Squad, Academy Award winning movie,
right,
and Brosker Award.
Absolutely, more importantly,
yes,
thank
more
you.
Importantly.
Yeah, yeah, definitely more importantly. Yeah, like that. A lot of the criticism around that was, you know, they're trying to fit this origin story for 6 characters or whatever it was into this hour-and-a-half movie and still do action. And you know, people either thought there wasn't enough action or that they almost glanced over the origin story for all these characters. So, I mean, I get it. I mean, if I were directing a film, which I never will, but like if I were, I would flat out just be like, well, you should know who this character is. And if you don't, too bad.
Iron Fist.
Well, we're going to give you a cool story. That's it, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's definitely the way it should be, though. If people really need to know all their origins, go to a comic shop and pick up the book, or go to Wikipedia. It'll tell you everything you need right there.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm sure Daniel would love that. Go into a comic book store and they have to read from number 1.
Hell yeah, I would fucking love that.
Yeah. Otherwise, you're not a true fan. Sorry.
No, definitely not.
Shop local, man. You've got to do it.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I see your crusade for that online, and I'm a big believer in that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Al. Like we connect on almost everything.
Am I interrupting something here?
Oh, you're in this too. You're
okay.
Fine. I wouldn't have married you otherwise. Let's head on over to the gaming side, Al. What have you been playing? Like, not just for the channel, but you yourself. What have you been playing for enjoyment? And what are you trying to get through and work on?
Like right now, ukulele is, I know I'm playing it for a channel, but like it's a game that I'm really enjoying. And, I'm kind of sad that I decided to do a series on the channel because otherwise I probably would have beaten it already. It's just that much fun. Let's see, Watch Dogs 2, still working my way through that. It's really good. Forza Horizon 3, I've put way too much time into that. But it's a beautiful game, and if you're on Xbox One or PC and you haven't already picked up a copy of Forza Horizon 3, it's on sale like every other week. The digital version, I know you can get the physical version real cheap if you're a physical guy like me. But I put way too much time into it. I got like 99% completion on it. I've done everything. I just love that game to pieces. Let's see what else.
So Forza is almost like your Mass Effect to me. Like you just got to do everything.
Yeah, Mass Effect. I still haven't played Andromeda. I bought it and it's been sitting on my shelf. And
nice.
Shame on me.
Good. No, well, at least you bought it. Like that's the important part.
Yeah, I probably should have waited. I would have saved a little bit of money.
No.
It's worth it.
You did it. It's well worth whatever you paid.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I wish it would have. And again, not to go off on a tangent here, but like, geez, I wish it would have ended better because it's looking more and more when I look at the news and what they've had come out of EA, it's looking more and more like that might be the last Mass Effect we get. Mm-hmm. And that makes me really sad. And the reason it makes me really sad is Mass Effect 1, 2, and 3 were big gaming events for me. So those were all three games that I bought day one and all three games that I enjoyed thoroughly. I know I played through Mass Effect 1 at least twice, Mass Effect 2 at least once.
That's a perfect game right there.
Yeah, Mass Effect 2 was just masterfully done. And then Mass Effect 3, for all the problems that people had with it, I try to, and this is just something that I know Daniel does as well. I like to look at anything that's art, whether it's movie, music, video game, TV show, you name it, anything artistic. I will look at reviews, but I don't take those into consideration when it comes to my own enjoyment of it. So when I saw Mass Effect 3 getting all these poor reviews, I was like, well, I don't know what game they're playing because I'm really enjoying this. Mm-hmm. So I think that despite all the criticism, Mass Effect 3, if we look at it retrospectively, it stands on its own, and it's a very, very solid video game. And, if you're one of those people that just quite honestly, just to be blunt, wanted to be pandered to as far as the ending, they gave that to you eventually too. So that removes your complaint about the game.
Exactly.
But overall, I thought as a trilogy, it was wonderful. And here's why I would say that, because when it was over, I was sad and I was left wanting more. And I think that when it comes to games, that's the best thing you can do, is have something so great that somebody goes, geez, I wish it wasn't over because I had so much fun playing it. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, man, Mass Effect Andromeda, I just wish it had worked out better, because my original thought was, if this game does well, then maybe we get a new trilogy, right? Mm-hmm. And then from there, they could just say, hey, we're going to go to another galaxy. We're going to do another trilogy. And it could just be a better version of Assassin's Creed in terms of quality control.
Absolutely, yeah.
It got completely slammed in the media before it even came out. I mean, at release day, I feel like it was behind the eight ball. 90% of the people who complained about the game never picked up the game and never played it and never will.
And probably have never played a Mass Effect. Like, that's the other crazy part about it. Like, hey, look at the funny animations. Have you played Mass Effect? No, but look at it. Come on, man.
So I get it. We live in a world controlled by memes, and even a news media system that's controlled by memes, right?
Yeah, at this point, yeah.
There's so many people who get all their information on politics, social issues, video games, music, etc., pop culture even, that everything they get is based on memes. And then they go back and they go and like, oh, look at this funny meme. Let me go see what it's about. And then they've already kind of predisposed
Yes.
their opinion to it. So it's just kind of this weird thing that's kind of cropped up because of the internet. And we're really the first generation of adults that grew up having the internet for the majority of our lives. So I think this is kind of a byproduct of it, not to get too deep, but I mean, Mass Effect Andromeda, I just wish it had worked out well. And I'm not saying it's a flawless game, but because I certainly haven't played it. And the facial animations were bad.
Well, they've all been fixed. So again, complaints gone. Like there's nothing to complain about on that end. Within a month, they were fixed.
Yeah, it's one of those weird things where I feel like you have one chance to make that good first impression, to use the cliche, and they released a product that wasn't perfect, and quite honestly, probably wasn't up to the standard that previous ones were. But I mean, it's a real shame all around. I think in the end, the ones who lose out, I mean, obviously EA and BioWare lost out on money.
Sure.
But the fans are really losing out too, because we might not get another Mass Effect game.
Yeah, it is a shame. And one of the things that I will say that Andromeda improved upon based on compared to the rest of the Mass Effect series is the action. The action that you have with your character, the control you have, you can now jump. All of that is an improvement upon the original formula. And it's like, yeah, we suffered on the animation side, and that was basically it. Like, that was the main thing that people were saying, because the story was solid. There was tons to do in the game. And then once again, the action gameplay to it, as far as the cover, as far as the jumping, as far as how you can customize your character and what kind of class you wanted to create, was all leaps and bounds ahead of what the original trilogy did. And I adore that original trilogy, but there's always room for improvement. As we talked about earlier, you can always refine. And that's what they did with the formula, and that's what they did with the characters. I was anticipating a multiplayer Mass Effect game, which is always a bad thing. I think if it just plays like a multiplayer game that you're playing a single player version of, you're not getting that experience. But that immediately went away when I started playing the story and the mission. I'm like, this is not just a multiplayer mode tacked on with some story scenes. This is actually a Mass Effect game. So, as you mentioned, no future for Mass Effect, and it sucks, but I mean, it's almost a lesson learned, not only for BioWare, but for the rest of the game developers out there, that if you become a meme, that might be the death of that franchise.
Yeah, I'm just hopeful that BioWare can rebound with a game that was announced at E3 that I think is going to be wildly successful, and that's Anthem. That game looks tremendous, and I looked at that game trailer with Ashley, and she was sitting down, and she's like, "That really looks like Destiny." And I was like, yeah, it kind of reminds me of that. And it also reminds me of Gears of War to a lesser extent, where it's like a really good co-op game. So I'm hoping BioWare can kind of get their bearings back with that, and then maybe revisit the Mass Effect universe at some point. Maybe just get somebody to take a flyer on it. I mean, I'm sure there's got to be a game publisher. If EA won't publish it, maybe somebody else will. I really don't want to see the franchise die. It would be too sad.
But at least we got this much, I guess we can say, just to lighten the mood a little bit.
Yeah, it's just, there's so many video game series, and I'm sure you can come up with a couple yourself, but like there's so many video game series out there over the years that I sit there and I go, man, I wish it could have kept going, but one small misstep, and your series could be dead. So like, Mercenaries, for example, right? Mercenaries 1, tremendous game. It was on the PS2 and Xbox original, and people still talk about that game to this day. And then they released Mercenaries 2. They put this huge marketing budget behind it, massive marketing budget. I mean, they had ads on pro wrestling. They had ads running in GameStops 24/7. I saw ads on the big three networks for this game. I mean, they put a lot of money into it, and then it kind of flopped because it was kind of glitchy. But I played the game, and and I mean, it's just one of those things where like they put this massive AAA budget behind it, and I think it ended up getting rated like a 7. And they put a budget behind it like they would have for a game that they knew was going to be rated a 9, so it was considered a disappointment, and then it just never came back. So it's just kind of upsetting as a fan of the series that it would just go away. But it's nature of the beast with with video games, man.
Yeah, and with business in general, it seems like. What about you, Kelly? What have you been playing, or at least working towards starting to play on your end?
I watched you play Andromeda.
You watched the ending part?
Yes, sort of. I watched you play. What did you just start? Fire Emblem.
Fire Emblem Echoes.
I still have to beat Pokemon.
Well, no, you beat Pokemon Sun and Moon.
No, I have to go and fight Gary or Red.
Well, that's way further than I made it. You've gone further than I have in a Pokemon game, and this is the first time that's ever happened.
First time ever.
Yes.
I'm proud of myself. It's because you told me I couldn't do it, so I had to prove you wrong. This is what marriage is. It's telling each other you can't do things and proving each other wrong.
And then I can pretend at the end that this was my master plan the whole time.
Yes.
Although I have no benefit, really, to you beating that Pokemon game. It's not like you were doing a review at the end, really. You did one on the podcast, but this was like, what, almost 2 years after the game released?
A long time ago.
Which was great. I love that.
So the things I'm working on are baby things. So I'm crocheting baby blankets and supposedly cleaning the junk room that is the baby's room.
Credit to you for, you've been buying most of your baby stuff locally, like through local stores. And even though the giant looming Amazon is here, like, hey, you can get this half off. You're like, or I can get it at Target. You know, you've been doing your, I don't know if that's just to not upset me if you would have done it otherwise, but I'm like, holy shit, man, I'm proud of my wife.
Realistically, and I could talk about baby things all day. We could just transition over
the baby
there.
cast, yeah.
Yes. But realistically, all these stores that are in the area will price match Amazon. Or it's really not that much more expensive than Amazon.
Yeah, their prices will already be pretty damn close anyway.
Right. So we were talking about Amazon Prime Day, and they had diapers on sale for $27 for X amount. Or I can go to Target and get 30 less diapers for $3 less and use my 5% off Target card.
Boom.
Like, it's the same thing. And I walk into a store.
What about you, Al? Did you see any kind of, in your circle of friends, like, hey man, Amazon Prime Day, look, this is what I got. I'm proud to say that I did not spot a single broquette that bragged about their Amazon Prime purchases.
You know who you should be proud of? My dad. He did not buy anything on Amazon Prime Day.
That's because he hears me whine about Amazon all day.
Well, he was also saying the thing he was really interested in, they had a Bluetooth Bose radio for $120. And then Bose emailed him and they're like, don't shop there, buy it from us for $120.
I mean, that's deal done, right? Basically. I don't know. What do you think, Al?
I'm right there with you. I'm a big supporter of shopping locally. And the reason I say that is because I used to be a retail employee myself. And I am cognizant of the fact that, you know, if you don't have foot traffic coming in a door, the doors get shut and people are out of jobs. So to give you an example, you know, right now I'm looking at upgrading my microphone and I'm trying really hard to find a local store that carries the one that I want. Same thing goes with the USB interface that I'm looking for that microphone. If I can find it locally at the same price, I'm just going to buy it locally. And then as far as video games go, which is like the majority of my, like, I guess you would call them entertainment purchases, if you will, you know, I go to the Best Buy that's by my house. I love the people that work there. I know quite a few of them. Believe it or not, some of them are former GameStop employees that I worked with at GameStop. And yeah, I guess they got out of one prison, went into another. But no offense to anybody who works at Best Buy, but it's retail, and you know, well, no, the GameStop, you know, y'all and me, like we're done, bro. But but like seriously, I mean, they really mistreated a couple people that I worked with. Me, you know, I don't have any grudges personally with GameStop. It's like, hey, I left. You know, you guys wanted to move in a different direction. I went and I found something else, and I'm much happier there. And, you know, everything kind of worked out. You got what you wanted. I got what I wanted.
Sure.
But they really mistreated a couple people I know personally at a store manager level. You know, that I mean, I looked up to these people as store managers because I was a newer store manager when I worked there. And, you know, for them to treat those people who I know were the best at what they did, for them to treat them like that after some of them like over a decade worth of service, like it just really leaves a bad taste in your mouth. But Best Buy is great, man. They match Amazon on anything. So if I can find it at Best Buy, I'll just go there. And mainly the reason is that way I don't have to worry about shipping. Like I don't have to wait for it to get there. Like I get that instant gratification. But I know I'm like considered an old guy in terms of that because I don't really care for digital copies of games as much as I like physical.
Yeah, we're the exact same way.
And the only reason why is, I'm primarily an Xbox guy. And if you have a digital copy of a game, if for some reason Xbox Live goes down, like I didn't know this until recently. Like I flat out own this game that's digital only, right? And Xbox Live went down one day and I'm like, well, I need a game that's offline and I need to record a video. And I go start to record the video, right? And I turn my Xbox on, I got my capture card running, my audio's going, everything's going. And it's like, you have to be signed to Xbox Live to play this. And I'm like, wait, what? Like, I own this. Like, I paid for this game already. And it's like, no, because it's digital, you have to be signed in.
You can't play it unless we let you play it.
And it's like, well, geez, like, what am I going to do? Like, I have to wait until your service comes back up so I can record a video. So, like, I know there's some physical copies of games that require that anyway. But I mean, just digital only, there's that. And then the other thing with digital versus physical is you can't sell the game if you're done with it.
Correct. Yes.
Now, I keep a lot of my games, like until they come up with, and I know they're working on, I know Xbox is working on something like this where like if you had a digital copy of a game, you could put it on a secondary marketplace or get money back if you agree to not play it anymore. Like if you basically give up your license to that game, you could get some form of money back and put it towards something else. Like that's fine, maybe for that digital only crowd, but I do like to have the physical copy. Plus, they look really nice on my shelf.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly right. Yeah.
You get to open the box and smell that new plastic.
I love that shit. And that stays there if you like just put out the game and quickly close it. You can have that good smell like 3 months later.
I know it's it's weird that you guys say that because I do the same thing. Like it's really weird. I don't know how to describe it, but like have you ever noticed that a new Sony system has a specific smell and a new Nintendo system has a specific smell and a new Microsoft system has a specific smell? They're all three distinct smells and they're all wonderful.
Yes,
but
they are.
But it's like, I know this is weird, but sometimes when I'm playing, like I'll put my controller up and I'm like, I can smell the Xbox goodness. Like you're holding it up and you're like, it's still new enough to where I can smell the Xbox goodness in it. So I'm with you, man. I like the physical copy, and I know that makes me really old school. But as far as shopping locally, you got to do it. Like so many places price match Amazon, and then like places like Best Buy, they'll price match Amazon, Newegg, all kinds of sites. I know Walmart price matches like anybody. I'm not saying like, hey, support the closest thing to Amazon other than Amazon and Walmart.
Seriously.
But yeah, like just shop locally. Remember, there's people that work there that have families to feed, and are, if we all go Amazon, then we're all just going to be running around driving delivery cars for Amazon.
Yeah, exactly right. Like I know a lot of people say, well, there's those centers where they actually bring out all of the product from, and that creates jobs. If it's a local center, it's like, no, that cuts down on jobs because the amount of people that they have to hire for those warehouses is significantly less than these retail locations. Like you're not really creating jobs by saying, well, they're shipping it to me from this local warehouse. No, not at all. You have to have it really significantly cuts down on those jobs. And we just saw today in our neighborhood, we were driving out and we saw an Uber driver who was delivering for presumably Amazon. And I'm like, this is not good. This is shitty. Like, I know that's a job in itself, but that guy's job equals, 2 or 3 other people that could have been doing that at a location.
Yeah, I don't want to get too political, but like just quite honestly, they're making a business out of undercutting their competition, and there's nothing wrong with that in a free market. But where I do have a problem is, the defense of them creating jobs. To me, it's not a valid one. I know several people who work for Amazon in their local processing facility here. That's just a hop, skip, and a jump from my house, and they don't pay people well. You're considered an independent contractor. There's no benefits. I mean, it's just, to me, you're not creating the right kind of jobs, if that makes sense. And so to me, that's not, something that's defensible.
Right.
Because we're facing, as just a country, again, not to get too political, but we're facing a crisis where we have a generation of young people who are having a hard time finding good paying jobs that have benefits
Agreed.
and
Yeah.
so that they can make a living wage. And I'm not saying that the answer is necessarily give everybody $15 an hour, but I think there's a discussion there, and we have to figure out some solutions. So, them paying, I think, contractors $9 an hour, that doesn't do anything for me. And look no further than their stockholder presentations. They cut themselves out of a profit. They're, a lot of quarters, they're not even a profitable business to my understanding. So, they're hoping that they can just basically outlast everybody else, and then that'll be the only place you can go for stuff. And I don't know. It's just then you start talking about business ethics, and I just want to be able to go to a retail location, talk to somebody, and buy something. Is that so much to ask for?
And pick up the product and look at it and take it home with you that same day. I gotta say right here, Kelli, Emperor Kelli, will you consider giving Mr. PurpleSwordfish some kind of position when you do inevitably decide to rule the rest of this world and this galaxy?
Of course.
Of
course, he's been here for the long haul. So
does he get to choose, or do you assign him? I want to know what kind of role you have, which both are okay.
It depends. What would you like to do, Al? In my universe of Kelliness?
I want something like really cushy, like. No, put me like as Secretary of Defense. I want to show some countries what's up. Like I want to have some hardline negotiations.
He wants to be Frank Underwood.
he wants to bomb Amazon.
He wants to bomb Amazon.
See this military right here? We need some of your exports.
All right, done. It's Palp approved.
Oh, that's great.
What about on the, just so that we can throw in some of the superhero talk in this for people that are like, you guys aren't talking comics. You guys aren't talking about Batman. People are going to ask you, what is your favorite superhero comic book? And then what is your favorite superhero film?
So, superhero, I try to keep them separate because I like both. I love both, actually, DC and Marvel. So my favorite DC hero is Superman, and favorite series for Superman, Death of Superman. I love that one because I grew up on it.
Very iconic. Yep.
Just a really memorable series that to this day I go back and read. I loved it. I was a kid. I was fascinated with it. So, DC, that'd be where I would go there. And then on the Marvel side, I read a lot more of this as a kid, was Spider-Man. So I would say if I had to pick a favorite superhero ever, it would be Spider-Man. Just because he's the all-American boy, right? He's just a normal kid who, a little nerdy like myself as a kid. And, it was kind of an identifiable character for me as an individual. So I just kind of gravitated towards that. The Maximum Carnage series was the one that I remember the most as a kid because it was just like the biggest event. So I remember reading the comic books, and then they came out with a video game, and I played that video game to death. And I read those comic books so much. I remember I was missing the front and back pages of most of those comic books. Like the cover came off of it because I had read it so much and carried it around with me. And, it was just a really cool idea. Back then, I didn't know there were comic book stores locally. So I was ordering directly from Marvel. Mm-hmm. They had this really cool thing where in the middle of the comic books, I don't know if they still have this or maybe if you remember it, but you could fill out a form and your parents would put their checking account information on this and you would mail it in, and then you would get a year's subscription to whatever you checked off the box for.
Yes.
And they would just bill your parents. And I had all the Spider-Man books because that was just my thing. And my brother had all the X-Men books, and we would just kind of trade them amongst each other. I would read the X-Men and then he'd read the Spider-Man and vice versa. So it was just really cool as a kid. And then movies, it's really hard because there's so many good superhero movies.
Before you go into the movies, I do want to say that I am so happy to hear that you and your brother traded comics and that was still a thing? Because I hear other creators that now work in the industry that are significantly older than we are, and they said that they used to trade their Silver Age comics with their neighborhood friends or their brother and sister, and that it still continued, many years later. And it gives me hope that now, like maybe now kids are also still trading out comic books with their friends and with their buddies. And I know they're buying comics because I work at a comic shop almost every day of the week, and there are kids that buy books. So it's such a warm feeling to me that to think that maybe somewhere someone is trading Batman War of Jokes and Riddles with another kid who's reading the current DC Rebirth Superman, and it's just like, all right, this is still going. This is great.
That's how you learned about new characters. I mean, I wasn't really up to snuff on X-Men, but because my brother would let me borrow his copy so that I could let him borrow my Spider-Man, and then we'd give it back to each other a day. I mean, we lived in the same house. So, I mean, it was just like, here you go read it and then give it back to me. And that's how I learned about characters like that. And then, even things like X-Force and Venom had a solo comic series for a while that wasn't very good.
He had several.
Yeah. But he looks cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, he had a solo comic series, and I remember reading that because my brother was really into Venom, and he just thought it was the coolest character, and he really liked that series. It wasn't really for me, but I learned more about the Venom character, and it kind of gave me more insight as to why he was the way he was in the Maximum Carnage series. So it was really cool as a kid to be able to kind of borrow books from other people, learn more, because it ended up with me buying more stuff. Mm-hmm. So I really do hope that's still going on. I know with digital distribution it might be a little bit harder to do, because I know a lot of younger people do Comixology, as I think the name of it.
It's really interesting because, oddly enough, about when Comixology first came around and the digital market first came around, it was, everyone was saying the doom and gloom of retail comic shops, the brick and mortar is gone, they're not going to exist anymore. And what it ended up doing is the actual opposite, where it ended up bumping up sales for the physical comic shops because people were reading the previews on their app and then they would go to their shop and pick up the actual books. So it was really interesting because I don't know, I wasn't really commenting on any of this. I think I was in high school during all of this, but I was like, or a lot of the people then were like, holy shit, this is the complete opposite of what we thought was going to happen. So it was kind of a nice change. And now that they're doing the digital codes on the comic books for some of the titles, people now have a copy digitally and they have the physical. And for a lot of people, that's kind of like it's perfect because I buy a book for $3.99 and I get the digital code as well. So it's more value to buy physical. Whereas if you just did the digital, it's still going to cost you $2 to $3.99 anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they picked the worst possible industry to do digital distribution, and just because it's a collector market. People will always collect these and want to have physical copy. It'd be like if you try to do digital distribution for baseball cards. I mean, nobody's going to buy into that because they like the physical thing. And then there's this whole industry. I mean, you work for a store that does this, of trading, selling, buying, all that. I know people who aren't even really into comics as much as a lot of other people would be, and they have one character and they just make it their mission to try and get the full collection or to try and get a full series, and then they move on to the next one. So it's always been a collector market. And I think digital is great for people who just want to read the story and all that, but your hardcore audience, which is in this case kind of your majority audience, they're going to want the physical copies. And I think there's always going to be an industry for it as long as the price is right on physical. And I'm glad that they went back to giving you guys the digital copy of what you were buying instead of a digital copy of something else, because I remember that was a big point of contention on your podcast.
Yep,
a while ago. Huge. And it made no sense from a business perspective. I have no idea why they were doing that. It made no sense.
Their fucking excuse was, well, we didn't hear any feedback one way or another, so we figured if we could just change it, then it'd be fine because no one would care. They thought no one gave a shit about the digital code.
If people don't like it, they let you know. This is the internet.
People complained about the half-page Snickers ad, okay?
Those are back, by the way.
Oh, yeah, they are. But they look like the rest of the comics, so you're just flipping the page, and then surprise, this is really a Snickers ad.
Well, I mean, They gotta make money. I get it.
And ads have been a part of comics since the beginning of time, and you're not getting less of the story. And that's where people get confused because they're like, this fucking Snickers ad is 2 pages long. It's like, you count the pages of the story. It's still the same as last month's.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, they've always been a part. I'll never forget Superman for a couple months there as a kid, the back cover. And I always thought it looked kind of goofy, but I was like, whatever, I don't care. I'm going to read the comic anyway. But the back cover for a couple months was an advertisement for the movie Encino Man, the Pauly Shore movie. But that shit worked, man. I saw that movie.
I was just going through New Titans #2, which is the first appearance of Deathstroke. And I'm looking it over and, I'm collaborating with my manager over the pricing and the condition and all of that. On the very back is a full ad of O.J. Simpson selling boots. And it's a comic. Yes, it's a 1-page comic of O.J. Simpson, like, selling some boots to kids. And I'm like, this is not only the first appearance of Deathstroke, but you got O.J. on the back. The extra value. This is incredible.
That is incredible. I would love to see that.
Oh, I've got to show you. Yeah, I'll text you a picture. I took a picture of one of the panels because I'm like, this is perfect. I'm never going to see another OJ ad.
It's just so out of left field. Like, it's like you're making it up, but I know you're not.
The guy was everywhere. Like, I watched that documentary, that OJ thing.
You watched all the documentaries.
That Academy Award nominated documentary of OJ Simpson, and the guy was fucking everywhere. I didn't exist at the time, and then I was just a baby, but he was doing ads for everyone. Everyone loved him. And then, the 90s.
Well, yeah, I mean, he was an iconic sports person. I mean, like, one of the greatest running backs to ever pick up a football. And then I remember the trial was just this massive thing. I was in middle school, maybe a little bit before middle school, but I'll never forget. The nation stopped. Everything stopped. The trial was nationally televised. You could not watch soap operas in the afternoon. Soap operas got canceled, basically. It was the O.J. Simpson trial on TV. And, like, just to show you how far it penetrated, like, pop culture, I'll never forget as a kid, and my parents told me under no circumstances was I allowed to buy one because it was stupid. But, like, I used to collect Pogs, and they had this one Pog Slammer where it was an O.J. Simpson Pog.
Stop.
The top of the Pog was a plastic piece that was like mock jail bars in front of his face. Oh my
God.
And it was your slammer. And I was like, Mom, I want to buy one. And she's like, that's stupid. You can get any other Pog other than that.
Do you know how much that Pog would have been worth right now?
Well, considering they had a whole bin full of them for like 50 cents a piece, I don't know, but probably more than 50 cents.
And people complain about now people not being concerned with what's really important. The whole nation, like you said, was all paying attention to this football star's fucking trial.
Yeah, I think that with that, it's like anytime something in our society happens, it's really egregious because those were if you really do the research on it, they were pretty brutal murders. Like, it was a pretty grisly murder. This wasn't somebody shooting somebody in the head and walking away. Like, it was a pretty brutal one. And I think between that and the celebrity factor, I mean, it's like the Casey Anthony thing. Like, the nation just can't get enough of it. And then the media just really hypes it up. And I know there's a lot of people out there who think that the media uses it as like a distraction to distract you from what's really going on and like the really important issues. And that's probably true to an extent. But, especially now, I mean, I kind of wonder now if something like that happened, if the O.J. Simpson trial happened now, it'd probably be 10 times worse because we live in a world with 24-hour news coverage, 24/7 Twitter, 24/7 social media. Like, it's like you're inundated with stuff. I mean, it could have been a lot worse if it happened 20 years later.
Possibly, maybe. You just looked up the Slammer, though.
I did. I went on eBay and I looked up this Pog Slammer, and I think I need one.
They're worth $8 now.
$8.
You should have bought 100 of them.
You found it on eBay?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm gonna prove my mom wrong.
I wish they were still 50 cents because I would have bought 100 of them and gave them out to everyone. All the Patreon backers, everyone that retweeted.
Well, you could tell that they thought it was like one of those, because Pogs were weird, man. Like, Pogs became like a pop culture thing. So they were like kind of like memes where like they'd have a pog that was like some little pop culture thing that was relevant for like, I don't know, their 15 minutes of fame, right? And then once it wasn't relevant anymore, you go to the mall and they would have them in a big old bucket and they'd be like 25 cents a piece, and you could just buy whatever they just liquidated them all. So yeah, man, pogs, those were weird.
I wonder if I want to know if there was a Bill Clinton pog, like during the whole Monica Lewinsky debacle. Like, I want there to be a Clinton pog somewhere out there. You're looking it up now, aren't you, Kelli?
Of course I am.
I'm also looking this up, and I'm finding one, but it's not Monica Lewinsky related.
There's no cigars? Not a single cigar? No sax? I said sax, not sex.
Yeah.
I did not find one. I want to find the N64 ones from Taco Bell.
The ones that you would pop out of the fucking...
Yeah!
They weren't even real pogs, though. Even as a kid, I knew. I'm like, this is way too thin to be a pog.
I tried so hard to win that N64.
Everybody did. I remember that.
So after that, I mean, we talked about pogs. We talked about superheroes, video games, gaming.
Went on some rabbit trails.
Yes, we went on rabbit trails. I've changed the way I say things. Like, everyone was proven wrong, and it is rabbit trails and not rabbit holes. It's a rabbit hole if it's an issue. Like, if you talk politics, it can be a rabbit hole. It's like opening a can of worms. But if you're just talking about something that's off tangent, that is a rabbit trail. And I stand corrected. I was completely wrong all these years. And so was the rest of the world.
I learned something today. I did not know that, but I do know now.
You should check out our Twitter, Al. It's at PalpaKelli and at Reasons I'm Broke. This was all settled historically on Twitter about a week or two ago. So everyone can just tune into that and they can see. What would you find just now?
Taco Bell had Star Wars pogs. I completely forgot about these, but now I remembered them.
I remember those too.
Defeat the dark side and win. Win what? What do you win?
Probably a free taco. Like, even an N64, for all the people that bought all that Taco Bell shit, it's like they really weren't giving away anything.
But if I was eating the tacos anyway.
I guess so. I mean, yeah, sure. I didn't have Taco Bell as a kid because I grew up in a Mexican household, and I was like, yeah, those aren't tacos. But now I actually do enjoy them because, while I don't consider Taco Bell Mexican food, I still consider it delicious. And especially now that they've introduced the fresco-style option, I'm thinking this is a healthier option of fast food. It is the healthiest option of fast food right now. Yeah, you got my fucking money, and it's cheap. Let me get a Crunch Wrap. Let me get a bean burrito. Done.
I can't eat Taco Bell anymore because your son hates it.
Just wait till he comes out. No. He'll be fine, and then you'll like Taco Bell
He's sitting in there like, Dad, this isn't real Mexican food. What are you doing?
When he gets older, he'll develop he'll have more resistances in his stomach, so he'll be able to have Taco Bell. Don't worry about that.
All right.
And he will. He's got to like all the things I like.
Okay, all the same things. What if he doesn't like avocados?
We're going to have an issue. There's going to be a divided household. Mm-hmm. So, Al, I want you to give the Brokettes another plug to where they can find you, where they can find the Let's Plays, where they can follow your channel.
Yeah, it's pretty simple. Just go in your browser, type in PurpleSwordfish.com. It'll redirect you to my YouTube page. And you can follow me on Twitter. It's at Swordfish Show. Swordfish Show. And then I'm on all the other social media, but I'm not going to go through all that. But yeah, Twitter and YouTube, those are the two best places to find me. And I do want to thank you guys for having me on again. Huge fan of the podcast. Long overdue. I'm glad that we did this collaboration, and hopefully you guys will let me steal the episode, put it on my channel, so that hopefully I can redirect some traffic your way.
Yeah, man, absolutely. And I will call upon you, much like Nick Fury did in that shitty Avengers movie, to come back on the show when Kelli is out of commission with the kid. I know I've had Neil we met Neil, he's one of our longtime listeners, and he said, people will be fine if you don't have any episodes for a little while after the kid is come and gone, or has been born, but I still want to have some kind he moved away a month later. He's like Benjamin Button, but the opposite. He's just a super quick. He's like Jack. He's Robin Williams.
Oh, okay.
He grew up super quick.
Is he going to move out because he doesn't like avocados? I'm sorry, Father. We have a conflict of philosophies here.
Leo, you're 7 months old.
Yeah. I'm moving somewhere where avocados can't grow.
So I will call upon you, Al, if you are up for it, to do at least one episode, hopefully multiples, while Kelli is recovering, so that we can have some content out there for the listeners, and maybe we can throw it on your channel if you want.
Yeah, I mean, I'm totally down. This hour flew by for me. I mean, it was a lot of fun. So I am always definitely down to come on the podcast.
Awesome, man. Thank you. And that'll be near the end of October, early November, if he's a late baby like Kelli and I were. So it'll probably be late.
Well, of course he will.
And around that period, we may either ahead of time do some episodes and then have them ready for release for when Leo enters the world, or we'll do them the week of and, try to put something out.
You can
in
have
between
fun
all that
editing
time.
that while your son's crying in the next room and your wife is pretty much dead.
So aside from that, again, head on over to PurpleSwordfish.com, at Swordfish Show on Twitter. And once again, if you go to PurpleSwordfish.com, it will redirect you to the YouTube channel. And you can, from right there, subscribe to the show. And you will get, at the very least every week, sometimes you do it every day, but you will get weekly episodes for the latest Let's Plays. And you will hear and see Mr. Purple Swordfish right there on the channel.
Thank you so much for all the plugs. I really appreciate it.
So thanks again, Al, for joining us.
Mm-hmm. And thank you all for tuning in and listening to this very special episode. We will have a normal episode for you guys next week, but like we said, it's always fun to step away from the norm and have a great guest on the show.
Yeah, let us know what you thought of today's episode at Reasons I'm Broke, at Kelli, and at Swordfish Show. All of these on Twitter. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Daniel.
I'm Kelli.
I'm Alex, aka Purple Swordfish.
Thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.